Right guys, okay, so I'm just here to give you a really quick crash course in chemistry. So you've got your page divided up into the basics, elements, molecules and compounds. Right, okay, so we already know this part. We know that every single thing is made up of atoms. We can accept that. So these are these tiny circles we imagine making up all stuff around us. These things are super small, about 10 billionths of a metre. 7 billion actually fit inside a full stop. That's mad. Okay, so these little things are made up of three types of tiny little particles inside. You probably know what these are by now. That's a proton, a neutron, and an electron. Okay, a proton's got a charge of +1. A neutron doesn't have a charge, that's 0, and electrons have a negative charge of -1. Touch wood, this isn't too new to us. Now, this is the thing. Atoms all distinguish themselves by the fact that they've all got different numbers of protons inside them. Okay, so one type of atom is called an element. Those little guys sit together in a periodic table. That thing you've got in front of you, there's about 100 or so inside that. Right, so we write atoms just like this. Sorry, elements just like this. We've got a helium element here. We've got a capital H and a little e. So an element will always have a symbol, which will be a capital letter, also followed by a lowercase one. Now the numbers next to these guys are super important. The small one I've circled here represents how many protons the element has. The number above tells you how many protons and neutrons together the element has. So in this case with helium, it's got 2 protons and 2 protons and 2 neutrons. So we'll call this one the proton number, nice and straightforward, how many protons it's got, and this one the mass number. That's the protons and the neutrons. So far, so good. Okay, so when these guys bond together chemically, we call them molecules. Alright? A molecule is just 2 elements chemically bonded together. We can see an example here. This is oxygen. It's chemically bonded to another one. We write this with a symbol O for oxygen and a little 2 to tell us there's 2 atoms in this bond. Right? So far, we're alright. Don't panic. Now, in your next column, I want you to write inside compounds. These little guys are just a molecule, but with 2 different atoms in there. So the example I've got here is methane. This is made up of a carbon atom and a hydrogen atom. It's a compound because these 2 are different, but they're chemically bonded together. Whilst this one, the molecule, these are the same. Okay? So it's not a compound because the elements are the same. This one is a compound because the elements are different. Right. Okay, so a chemical bond usually comes from something that we call a chemical reaction. You need to be able to describe these in a certain way. Okay, so a chemical reaction is like telling a little story. We start off by talking about the reactants, the things we're going to react together. And then we draw a little arrow, and it goes to the products or the things we're going to produce. Okay, so the arrows show whether we can reverse what we've just done, or if we can't. This is a reversible reaction, what I've drawn here. You can see because the arrows go both ways. This one's irreversible, this arrow only goes one way. That's how we'll draw it. So in a chemical reaction, we'll draw the reactants, go into the products, and an arrow will tell us whether it's reversible or irreversible. Now, I get it. That was loads of information, dead fast, and I always speak fast. Let's sort down with a little example. Okay. So, what we've got here is a chemical reaction for magnesium and oxygen. So I've started out by writing the reactants. I'm reacting magnesium, big M, little g, and oxygen. This is a molecule because there's 2 oxygens bonded together. This is just an element because it's just magnesium by itself. Now, during a chemical reaction, we write our reactants, draw a little arrow, and then go to our products. The product of this reaction is magnesium oxide. Now this is a compound because these are 2 different elements now chemically bonded together. Before they weren't, it was just an element and a molecule. We've chemically bonded them, now we've got our compound. I've visually drawn this with atoms on, just so you can imagine it. So we've got 1 magnesium atom, meeting up with its 2 oxygen buddies, going to our magnesium and oxygen, or magnesium oxide compound. Okay, I'm not going to go into too much detail in this bottom part, but when we draw these reactions or write them out in our little story, reactants going to products, these always have to be balanced. This one you can see it's not balanced because there's 2 oxygens, 1 magnesium, and then for some reason there's not 2 oxygens anymore. We'll go into this later, but by the end of this we'll be able to explain the difference between an element, a molecule, a compound, and then write out an equation to explain the reaction we've done, and lastly we'll be able to balance the equations. That's the end game. As much facts as you can, then we're going to do that annoying spinny thing. Off you go.